That was not pointing at me. Don't give me the naughty finger. Hi, this is Teresa from Your Mama's Book Reviews, and I have a quick book review for you, and then I have a fun way that I found to get my TBR, at least for September. And so I have my notes over here, so if you see me turning my head, you'll know why. So I listened to 2 books on Audible, and one of them was called Night of the Mannequins by Stephen Graham Jones. And I kept seeing it on YouTube videos, and so I decided to listen to it because it was for free on Audible with my subscription. And it was just okay. It was like a funny idea, like a bunch of kids who have this mannequin that they play with, and then when they get bored of it, the mannequin apparently comes to life and starts killing people. And it was just, I didn't like the way that it was written, which I know a lot of people complain about because he doesn't have any dialogue or anything. It's just basically like a stream of consciousness. And I definitely didn't like that. But I thought that it was a pretty funny book. And I thought that it was an original idea and weird enough that I liked it. But I just didn't like his writing style. The second book that I listened to, which I finished last night, was A Child Alone with Strangers by Phillip, Fracassi, Henry. And that was excellent. I'm sorry, it was just Phillip Fracassi. The main character's name was Henry. His last name was not Henry. Just the character's name was Henry. And he is a little boy who lives with his father. I guess his mother's already passed away. And the one day his father is hit by a car and dies. And Henry lives through it. And when he wakes up from his coma, he can read minds. And so he grows up with his uncle and his aunt. And eventually, apparently, his father has a huge settlement for him. And this group of criminals find out about it and end up kidnapping Henry. And these are like very not nice people. Like, especially the lead guy. He's like a nasty guy. These people would kill Henry, even though he's a little kid, like for no reason, just to be nasty. And there was like a lot of stuff like with Henry being hit, and the one guy, like, I mean, pretty much beats him, and that part was super sad, the way that they treat, like, you know, he's just a kid. But Henry can sense things. He can tell what these people are thinking, and he can sense that there is something else in the house, in the basement. And he can sense that creature's thoughts, and he knows that the creature is going, she doesn't like that there's people there. And so he keeps trying to warn these people, there's something else here, and they don't want to listen to him, and they just tell him to shut up. And eventually she makes herself known, and it was really, really good. It was kind of a crazy book. Like, I actually audibly gasped a couple of times, which I rarely ever do. I would highly recommend that one. And so some of the books that I read this very short book called Orphan's Quest. And this is by Terry Ironwood. And I think that I bought it because somebody had posted that they wrote it, or their kid wrote it. Like, it's like a self-published book. And it was okay. Super duper short. It was like 100 some pages. It might not even have been that. I think it was like 90 some pages. And in this book, the main character is named Chip. And he is born with red eyes. And so because he's born with red eyes, they hand him to the king, and they basically say, we don't want this baby. Like, he's abandoned because they think he's demonic. And the king wants to just let him die, but the queen steps in on his behalf and says, no, you know, let's let him be raised, and he doesn't have to be around you or anything. So as he grows up, you know, he's raised, and people think he's a demon. He was raised by a really nice lady, and when he was of age, he works in the kitchens for a nasty lady. That's what it was. And I'm sorry, my memory's not great. And the nasty lady, he works for her for 2 years, and she's really, really nasty. And so eventually, she just causes problems for him, and the king is about to just, I don't know, put him to jail or kill him or whatever. But a magician steps in, and he basically saves Chip and trains him to be a magician. And then he has to go on this manhood quest to the pass of death. And he meets an ancient evil there. And I don't know. It's a typical fantasy book, and it was okay. It wasn't great, and I'm not going to read the rest of the series. But I will leave the author a decent review, and because I know it's really, really hard for self-published authors, and I give them credit for writing a book that, I mean, it was okay. Wasn't horrible, but it wasn't great neither. Okay. Then I read this book called How the Light Gets In by Katy Upperman. And this is about Chloe. And, no, it's about Callie. Callie is 17 and her sister dies. And so she ends up like quitting swimming and she gets bad grades and she's smoking weed all the time. So her father says she either has to go to some type of reform school or she has to go stay with her aunt who lives in California, I believe. It just says Coastal Victorian, 1 year after Chloe's death. So as she's living there, she is having some supernatural stuff happen to her at night. You know, voices and stuff moving around and stuff like that. And she thinks it's the ghost of her sister. And so, you know, there's like a whole like love thing. Like she falls in love with some kid and she ends up like loving where the aunt lives and wanting to stay there. But it's also supernatural because of what's going on with the ghost of the sister. So it was a good book. It was all right. I just finished this book today called The Borrowed Life of Fredrick, Fife by Anna Johnston. And this was a super sweet story. It was almost cheesy in parts. And this is, I believe it takes place in Australia. And it's about a man named Fred. And Fred, his wife had died from cancer, and with all the bills and everything, he could not afford to keep their house. He lost the house after his wife passed away, and they had no children. And his wife was his whole world. So when she died, he didn't even know how to function, and then he loses the house, and his dog dies right after she dies, so he's all alone in the world. He's 80-some years old, and the one day he's taking a walk, and he had found out that he was going to be kicked out of his apartment because he couldn't pay the rent and he didn't know what he was going to do. And he's walking by where a nursing home was having an outing and there was a man in a wheelchair, and Fred is very friendly. So he goes up and he starts talking to the old man and realizes that the man is dead. So he goes to push the man to where the people from the nursing home are, but accidentally gets attacked by seagulls, and accidentally the man falls into the river and flows downstream and is gone. And the lady who's like in charge of the outing, like the carer, she comes and she starts talking to this man like she's like he is the man that fell in the river, and starts calling him Bernard. So apparently this Fred looks exactly like the guy who fell in the river that was dead. And so she doesn't believe Fred when he keeps trying to say, I'm not Bernard, my name is Fred. Because Bernard also was, you know, in the beginning stages of dementia. So she thinks, you know, he's just making stuff up. So she takes him back to the nursing home, and, you know, he tries a couple more times to say, my name is Fred, and nobody believes him. And then he ends up making friends with one of the older men there with Alzheimer's and that man's wife. And he ends up like just making friends with a lot of the people there. And he's much nicer than Bernard was. Like he's very kind and complimentary gentleman, and he just like loves being with other people. And so eventually he just decides to go along with this, that he's Bernard, for better or for worse. But then it turns out Bernard has a daughter that he was estranged from, and she has her own story about how Bernard had disappeared when she was a child, and she didn't want to talk to him, and Bernard had tried to reach out to her before his death, and she didn't want to talk to him. And so she ends up coming into contact with Fred and thinking that that's her father. And Fred just is like, he loves her like a daughter. And this ultimately is a lot about regret, a lot about like looking back on your life. Like it's a lot of it is about Fred looking back on his life and what you would expect somebody of his age to be thinking about in the end stages of life. But it's really a love story. It's like a rom-com, but between this girl and what she perceives as her father. It was very sweet. And I didn't sob at the end, but I did cry. And there's some really funny fart stuff in here, which was really inappropriate. Like, I don't know. You just have to read it. I sent Bella some of the pictures and she's like, why? Like, why is there constantly farts in this? I don't know why, but it made it entertaining. And I was thinking of DNFing it, and then I ended up really liking it. So I would definitely, oh, it's so sweet, so sweet. Just this gentleman, you feel really bad for him, and he's so sweet. And it was a love story between essentially a daughter and a father, even though they're not blood related. Like, he becomes her father. It was a really good book. And I read Never Lie by Frieda McFadden. I actually read 2 books by Frieda McFadden. This is the one I still have the copy of. And this is about Trisha and Ethan. They are engaged. Are they engaged? No, they're married. They're just married for like 6 months. And she hasn't known him for much longer. And they're looking for a house. And the one day they're in a blizzard and they decide to go look at this big, huge house. And which is extraordinarily cheap considering how huge it is. And so they, Bella, please stop. You're driving me crazy. Don't do the hula hula dance right now, okay? You're distracting me.
I was doing anything.
You didn't know you were going.
No, I didn't.
You take after me in more ways than one, child. Anyway, they end up in a blizzard and they get stuck in this woman's house. And the woman used to be a psychologist, and the newlywed Trisha, the wife, she ends up finding this doctor's room full of cassettes of her sessions with her patients. And the doctor had disappeared for like 3 years. She just faded off the face of the planet. Nobody knows what happened. And as Trisha is listening to these cassette tapes, then you're kind of getting an idea of what happened. And it was a really good thriller and a lot of twists and turns. I really like Frieda McFadden. Her books are super fun. And then the other Frieda McFadden I read was The Ex. And that has Cassie and Joel. And Cassie meets Joel and thinks he's like the most perfect man ever. But he has a crazy ex-girlfriend, Francesca, who everybody, like Joel's friends are all like, oh, Francesca's wonderful. Francesca's wonderful. And so Cassie's like, who is this Francesca? And it turns out like, Francesca's not out of the picture yet. She's a stalker. And so I'm not going to say any more than that because, again, those are the types of books you just gotta read because there's too many twists and turns and I don't want to give anything away. Those are the 2 Frieda McFadden books I read, and I'm really having fun reading her books. And so those are the books that I read. And then I decided for September to have each of my family members pick 1 book for me to read, but it has to be spooky. And I get to pick one. That's 5 books. Because there's me, Bella, Sarah, Mike is my husband, and Andy is my son. And Bella's friend Pickles decided to pick a book too. So I have all these books that I have to read. And I don't know what any of them are about, so I'm not even going to say what they're about. I'll tell you about them when I do the reviews. Bella picked out this book called Little Monsters by Kara Thomas. Andy picked out The Inmate by Frieda McFadden. Mike picked out Home Before Dark by Riley Sager, which I believe I had started but never finished. And that was because he picked it from downstairs, and this was the only horror book I had on my entire downstairs shelf. I just thought that the door was opening by itself and got creeped out. I picked out Darcy Coates' The Haunting of Gillespie House. Oh, yes. I read a Darcy Coates book, too. The second book to the book that I read before, but I'm not even going to say it because I don't even remember the name of the book. But it was like the second book to the book that I reviewed before. Pickles picked out Schrader's Cord by Scott Leeds.
Because it had the word cord in it.
Because it had the word cord, and Pickles is the musical genius I've spoken about. Sarah picked out Stephen King's Salem's Lot, which is going to take me forever to read. And then she tried to redo it. She's like, okay, well, let's just put a bunch of books down, a bunch of horror books, and I'll close my eyes and pick one. And then whatever one I pick, then, because then that way you don't necessarily have to read this right now. No. She still picked Salem's Lot. So I guess I'm just going to read it. So I'm going to try to read all 6 of them. I'm starting now because I just finished the book I was reading. And I'm going to try to read all 6 of them. And if I can't, I'll have to go into October. But I'm hoping I can. And Sarah, who's 9, was super cute. And she decided that she was going to do her own TNR list. So we all helped her pick out books like, what did you pick out? Go get them. There was like the Hardy Boys. Mike picked out a Hardy Boys book. And he said exactly what I thought that he would, which was, oh, the Hardy Boys. I loved them when I was a kid. And so we all helped her pick out books for her TBR. So she's going to go get them really fast. Pickles picked out The Summer of the Swans by Betsy Byers, which is an excellent book. Sarah picked out this book called Ruby Holler by Sharon Creech. Andy picked out The Whipping Boy by Sid Fleischman because he liked the picture of the bear. Mike picked out The Hardy Boys, The Lure of the Italian Treasure, which is literally the only Hardy Boys book she has. I picked out The Nancy Drew Diaries by Carolyn Keene because I was a huge Nancy Drew fan when I was a kid. Yes, Bella does not like Nancy Drew. She tried to read one of the old-fashioned ones last year for school. I homeschooled the kids, and I made her read it, and she hated it. And Bella picked out Bridge to Terabithia by Catherine Peterson because she read that book, and she liked it. And so that's Sarah's TBR, but I thought it was super cute that she went right after I did it and decided to do a TBR. And Mike was like, she just wants to be like you, honey. And it was super cute. So anyway, that's our video, and I will get on Bella to get it done quickly because she takes forever. And now she's about to smooch. She's about to smooch Sarah. So, all right, Sarah, you got to scooch out of the way so she could turn the video off.
She's holding me.